All right, so we'll say good morning. Let us begin by thanking our shir sponsors for today, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Iyar, Yona and Shushie Ehrenfeld, for dedicating all the shir and drashos this month in memory of Yona's grandfather, Yosef and Shmuel Aron. Marc Karstaedt for dedicating the shir and drashos in memory of his mother, Chana Bat Shraggai. Our Daf Yomi sponsors, William and Rezi Eskin, in memory of Bill's mother, Gittel Bas Moshe Nochum, whose yahrzeit is on the 25th of Iyar. And I will say, as we've been doing every day to dedicate our learning, the Iloi Nishmas, the victims of Meron, today we dedicate our learning, the Iloi Nishmas Shraggai Gestetner, who was a skver chassid from Muncie. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah and the families a nechama. And I will say with that, let us begin, or let us continue, I should say. So today's daf is Chav Vav 26, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Chav Hemem. We have a lot to do today. We left off yesterday, I believe, Rabbi Yossi Omer. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, about 17 lines up from the bottom. So we'll say, so just to reorient ourselves a little bit, the topic we are discussing is how the carbon tamid would be offered up. So remember again, so the Mishnah spoke about the second lottery, and the second lottery was to determine the tamid, right? So what we established was there would be one Kohen who would go ahead and win that lottery, and then what would happen? The 12 Kohanim to his right would be the ones who would do all of the other avodos. Interestingly enough, amongst the avodos was the carrying of the sacrificial parts. And as I mentioned yesterday, the sacrificial parts were not brought up immediately to the Mizbeach. Instead, they were brought to the ramp, and they were laid down on the ramp. Although we'll see that's a machlokes as well. We also saw that the Mishnah went through the order in which the sacrificial limbs are brought up onto the Mizbeach. There's a particular order for that to occur. So the Gemara now says as follows. So Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Derech Hafshetu Hayakar. Rabbi Yossi says, the way you go ahead and you bring up the sacrificial parts is the manner in which the animal is skinned or flayed. So the Gemara says, Keitza Derech Hafshetu. So what's the order of flaying? Harosh v'haregel, the head and the right hind leg. Ha'ukotz v'haregel, then there's the tail and the left hind leg. Shtei defanos, the two flanks. Shtei yadayim, the two forelegs. Ha'chozeh, the chest. Geira. So the Gemara says, right, this is, you'll see this is different obviously than the order. Geira is the neck. Shtei defanos, the two sides. Va'ukotz v'haregel. And ultimately, again, the ukatz is the tail, and the regel is the left hind leg. Rabbi Yosef Lili Omer, Derech Iluya. Rabbi Yosef Lili says, no, the way you bring up the sacrificial limbs. I'm sorry, did I skip? I skipped. I'm sorry. Rabbi Akiva Omer, thank you. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Derech Nichuso. Derech Nisucho, excuse me. Rabbi Akiva says you bring bring up the limbs in the order in which the animal is dismembered. So how would that be? Hayakart Ketzad, Derech Nisucho, Harosh v'haregel, Shtei Adayim, Hachazeh v'agera, Shtei Defanos, Ha'okotz v'haregel. So we'll say, so again, they're all just, the machlokis just is it's the same limbs, all the same parts, just machlokis as to what order you're bringing them up in. Rabbi Yosef Lili Omer Derech Iluya. Rabbi Yosef Lili says you bring it up in the order of the quality of the limbs. Hayakard Keitza Derech Iluya Harosh v'haregel, the head and the right hind leg. Chol ha'chozeh agera shtei defanos ukotz haregel shtei adayim. But the Gemara says v'haksiv kol nasach tov yerech v'kasef. So we'll say v'kasef. Interesting enough, I will say. So remember, in Rabbi Yossi Aglili's model, the shoulder/sides was brought up before the thigh, because according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the shoulder/sides had greater quality than the thigh. Yet the pasuk that the Gemara is quoting over here, the pasuk from Yechezkel, seems to indicate that the thigh of the animal is of higher quality. To which the Gemara says, "Hahi b'kechusha." You're right, in a smaller or leaner animal, so the thigh has more meat. But on a larger animal, it is the shoulder/side that has more meat on it. Okay. Amar Rava says, Vein Tana Didan, Bein Rabbi Yossi. So Rava says, whether according to our Tana of the Mishnah or Rabbi Yossi, Basar Iluya de Bisra Azlinon. We go ahead and we want to bring up, see, I will say, interestingly enough, The Tanakama holds, subscribes to the same idea as Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds that the order of the limbs is really the order of what he calls derech iluyav, the quality of the quality of the animal. So the Gemara suggests that our Tana, the Tana of our Mishnah, holds of this same idea. So what's their machlokes? Their machlokes, Rabbi Yossi, is at the it says Ben Tana didam Rabbi Yossi basar iluya de bisra azlinon. Both our Tana and Rabbi Yossi will both agree that halacha l'maisa we go after the quality of the meat. So what's the machlokes? Mar azil basar ivra de bisra, umar azil basar shmeina de bisra. So we'll say, so one opinion held that quality is defined by quantity, right? We bring up the limbs that have the most amount of meat first, and then as we go from most meat to least meat, and ultimately again the other opinion holds that what determines quality is the fattiness of the meat. Therefore we bring up the fattiest parts first, and then we go to the leaner parts as the progression goes forward. So my time was salka rega bahadiresha. We'll say, by the way, interesting enough, if you notice, according to all of the opinions, well, before we get to this, first is, why is it that the right hind leg is brought together with the head? Why are those two things brought together? To which the Gemara says, my time asaka rega b'hadiresha, v'shundiration afishe v'atzamas, cover rega b'hadei, since the head is filled with bones and not a lot of meat, therefore they bring the right hind leg, which is a lot of meat, together with the head. Interestingly, the koli amma mias rosh karberesha minadam. Supposed to say, interestingly enough, if you notice, according to all opinions, the head is offered up first. Right? Interesting. The head is offered up first. So why is that? So the Gemara says, Minalam, from where do we know that? Tisanya, minayin l'roshu pader shekom lechol da'ivarim. How do you know that the head, together with some of the fats, is offered up first? Talmud Omar es rosho ve'es pidro va'arach. Because we'll say the pasuk says, its head and its fats you will arrange on the mizbeach. So the first thing the Torah mentions is the head and the fats. So therefore, again, you see from here that no matter what order you're going to bring for the limbs, head is always first. Ve'idach pader achrina lemay as the top of chavav. We'll say, so why do I need another mentioning of the fats later on? What does that come to include? So we'll say, this is very interesting. The Chidusanya comes to teach you the following halacha. What's the halacha? Keitzad haya oseh. He said, we'll say, when you are bringing the head together with the fats, how exactly do you arrange those two? To which the Gemara says, very interesting, nosin es hapader abeis hashchita uma'alehu. But we'll say, interestingly enough, when you would bring the head, you would place the fats by the base hashchita, by the area, because remember, it's not just the head, it's the head and part of the neck, right? It's the head with the neck until the area of the shchita. You would place the fats right by the incision area of the neck. V'zehu derech kavod shamayla. And this was considered to be an act of kavod for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll say, why? What's the issue over here? The issue over here, Rashi says, derech kavod lefisha beis hashchita meluchloch bedam harosh. But remember again, the area where we shech the animal, the flesh and the hide, or the flesh, is stained red. So it doesn't look nice to go ahead and bring up the head with that stained red area. So essentially you place the fat right by covering up the beis hashchita. I guess that looks much nicer. I don't know, it doesn't, it all sounds interesting. I do say, so again, I always think it'll be interesting for us to adjust, according to the opinions who hold that there are karbanos in the third Beis HaMikdash. It'll be very interesting in Yom Hashem for us to see this. But in any event, they would essentially cover up the Beis HaShchita. That's what would happen over here. So they'd cover up the Beis HaShchita with the fats. Good. We'll say good. We go weiter. So now we're making our way, right? So we've got remember again, we have our first payas, our first lottery, which was for what? Shumas Hadeshan, right? We have our second lottery, which was really just for carbon tamid. Remember again, I both say everything mentioned in the Mishnah was all associated with tamid. Now we're moving forward. Remember again, I both say we learned how many payasas were there, how many lotteries? 4. So now we're up to number 3. Hapayas hashlishi. This is beautiful. The third payas, the third lottery, liktores. Right? Ultimately, again, was for who was going to offer up the kitores. And what would happen? The Gemara says, chadashim liktores ba'u vehefisu. So we'll say the third lottery, interestingly enough, was reserved for people who had never done kitores before. So if you had never done Ketoras, they would make the announcement, literally, Chadashim L'Ketoras. Those who are new to the Ketoras, namely those who have never performed the Avodah of Ketoras, come and participate in this lottery. Ve'fisu, and Revi, then we go up to the fourth lottery, Va'Revi, Chadashim Im Yishanim. So we'll say, the fourth lottery was both new and old. Now again, I will say, what that just means is, when we go back to the fourth lottery, everyone is eligible. So as opposed to lottery 1 and lottery 2 and lottery 4, where every Kohen is eligible, every Kohen who's on service is eligible, lottery number 3 was dafka reserved for Kohanim who had never yet done the avoda of the Ketoras. So the Gemara says, now the Gemara jumps for a moment to the lottery number 4. V'aravi chadashim mishanim mi ma'ale ivarim min hakevesh lemizbeach. Both said this is very interesting. What was lottery number 4? Lottery number 4, both says, I mentioned before, in lottery number 3, so the last number of people, right, or a number of Kohanim were selected to take the sacrificial parts and bring them to the ramp of the Mizbeach. Interestingly enough, lottery number 4, according to the Mishnah, although we see such a machlokes, lottery number 4 was which Kohanim would take the limbs from the ramp and bring them up to the top of the Mizbeach. That was lottery number 4. Good, says the Gemara. Tana, me'olam lo shana adam ba. We'll say a person, a Kohen, no Kohen ever did the Ketoras twice. Interesting. No Kohen ever did the Ketoras twice. My time. And I will say, by the way, this doesn't include Kohen Gadol. You understand, right? Kohen Gadol does Ketoras all the time. But Lamaisa, regular Kohanim, no Kohen ever did the Ketoras twice. My time. Amr Bichanina, mipnei shema asheres. Because I will say beautifully, the Ketoras is a skula to become wealthy. Now Rashi says over here, mipnei shema asheres, lefichach lo hayu manichin oso l'shanos. Therefore, I will say they didn't permit Kohanim to do the Ketoras more than once, in order to literally share the wealth. Literally share the wealth, that every Kohen should have the opportunity to go ahead and partake of this bracha. Amor Rapapala Abaye, my timer. Why is it that Ketoras is a skula for wealth? What's the pshat with that? So ilema mishum dichsev yasimu Ketoras ba'apecha uksiv basrei barich Hashem chelo. Maybe you'll say, because the pasuk says yasimu Ketoras ba'apecha, which literally means they will place Ketoras. Ba'apecha literally means in your nose, but it means but it really means in your presence. They'll offer up Ketoras in your presence, and then it says afterwards, Baruch Hashem Chelo. Hashem will bless your resources. So you see the juxtaposition, ultimately again, of the bracha of Ketoras, or the concept of Ketoras, with a blessing of your resources by Hashem, is the remez, is the scriptural allusion that Ketoras is a skula for Parnasa. Well, if that's the case, Iachi, Olanam Yaksiv, V'chalila Mizbechacha. We'll say the same pasuk that says Yasimu Ketoras Ba'apecha also says V'chalila Mizbechacha. That's an Ola. So maybe an Ola is also a skula for Ashiras, for wealth. Amalei Hashchicha V'halo Shchicha. We'll say Ola is very common. Ketoras is not as common. So it makes sense, the Gemara says, that the bracha of Ashirus is associated with that which is not as common. So look at Rashi for just a moment. This is very interesting. Halo shchicha u'mistabra dechi ksiv osher. When we speak about wealth, adalo shchicha. Ultimately, again, that refers to that which is not common. De'im kain nimtzu hakol ashirim. Because otherwise, everyone would be considered wealthy. Now, this is very interesting. And if everyone's considered wealthy, then what? Then no one's wealthy. Which will say such a profound yesod, how wealth is incredibly relative. Incredibly relative. So, okay, in any event, the Gemara says right there. So the Gemara just want to point out this notion that Ketoras is a school of wealth. I think I mentioned this yesterday, which is one of the reasons, by the way, even today, when we don't yet have the opportunity to go ahead and offer up Ketoras, why it's so important to recite the Parshas HaKetoras, which is also a skula, Emirat Hashem, to be successful in one's parnasa. So some actually even have the custom to recite Parshas HaKetoras from a cloth, from a piece of parchment. But again, one recites it every day from the Siddur, a beautiful, beautiful skula as well. And I will say, why is it that Ketoras is a skula for wealth? Like, what's the pshat? So there are many different interpretations of this, but there's a beautiful medrash the Medrash brings down that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Chaviva alai, I love all of your karbanos, but the most chaviv, the most wonderful thing for me is the Ketores. And why is that? Why is that? So Rabbi Yitzchak Rabbi says something so beautiful. Actually, well, the Medrash quotes it. The Rebbe expounds on it. The Medrash says because by all other karbanos, there's usually something that everyone else gets, right? So if you offer up a chatas, right? So you offer up a chatas, part of it goes on the mizbeach. The Kohen gets the meat, gets the hide. You think about all the karbanos, there's usually something that someone is benefiting from, either the Kohanim or the Bailim. There's only one karban from which no one derives any level of benefit, and that is the Ketores. Right? The Ketores is burned. That's it. There's no tangible benefit that anyone gets from the Ketores. Nothing comes to the Ketores. And even the scent, you're not permitted to be nana from the scent of the Ketores. So there's no benefit. There's no hana. So why do you offer up Ketores? Ketores itself is the purest expression of selfless service of God. Because we'll say so many times when we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by definition, by nature, we are utilitarian beings. Right? If I'm going to do something in life, I ask myself one core question, which is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Sometimes we articulate it, sometimes we don't even articulate it, but it's what motivates almost everything we do. And even in the realm of divine service. That's why Antigonus, Ish Socho, has to say, do not be like servants who serve the Rebbeinu Shalom for the sake of receiving reward, because it's natural for people to be utilitarian. So therefore, even with karbanos, even with sacrificial service, it's hard to say that there's nothing in it for me, because there is. There's only one avoda that is purely selfless, and that's the Ketores. There's absolutely nothing in it for me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, do you know the avoda that I love most? I love the Ketores most. Because I know that when you offer it, you're only offering it because you love me. You're only offering it because you're committed to me. Ketores is the most beautiful, selfless expression of love and commitment to the Ribbono Shel Olam. So it's almost as if Gilu, that when I express that selfless love and commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribbono Shel Olam, I'm giving this to you. I'm not getting anything out of it. It has nothing for me. I'm not getting a hide. I'm not getting a steak. I'm not getting anything from it. I just love you and I just want to connect with you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that selfless commitment, and in return wants to take care of us. And how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu take care of us? With our parnasa. Because all of us know without parnasa, life is pretty difficult. Life is incredibly challenging. So it sounds strange, as a reward for the selfless act, which we do for no reward, right? As a reward for the selfless act of expressing our love and commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ribbono Shel Olam in turn expresses his love and commitment to us by providing for our material needs in Olam Hazeh. A beautiful, beautiful connection between Ketores and Parnasa, which I will say again for us also highlights the need. I think in general, and we'll have to go on, in general, the power of reciting karbanos contemporarily is that for us, until we have the third Beis HaMikdash, pretty much all karbanos we recite are selfless, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you're a Kohen or Yisrael, there's nothing I quote unquote get from that recitation except Ribbono Shel Olam, this is the best that I can do in the absence of my Beis HaMikdash. So it's almost for us, Ki'ilu, everything becomes like Ketores, becomes a selfless act of devotion and commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In any event, that's the connection between Ketores and Parnasa. Amar Rava says, Lo mishkach l'tzurva me'rabanan de mori ela da asi mishevet Levi o mishevet Yisachar. So we'll say, Rava says something very interesting. You will never find a Talmud Chacham who goes ahead and de mori, paskins halacha, who's not from either Shevet Levi or Shevet Yisachar. So where do we know this? From Levi Dichsiv, Yoru Mishpatech Al Yaakov. By Levi it says, because Levi is when Levi gets their bracha, right? Levi is told, you will teach the laws to Yaakov, which indicates that Levi, right? The teachers are from Leviim. And Yisachar Dichsiv, Yisachar Yodei Bina Li'itim, Ladas Ma Ya'aseh Yisrael. And again, by Yisachar, the pasuk says that it's in Divrei Yomim that they are Yodea Bina Li'itim. They are the ones who know knowledge for all times in order to instruct the Jewish people what to do. So therefore, again, Rava suggests that teachers, those who teach Torah, ultimately again either come from Shevet Levi or Shevet Yisachar. Ve'ema Yehuda Nami. Why not Shevet Yehuda as well? After all, by Yehuda, what does it say? D'chsev Yehuda Michokeki. It says Yehuda is the lawgiver. To which the Gemara says, it's very interesting. Asuke Shmaisa Aliba de Hilchasa Ka'amina. So Rabbi says, no. What I'm talking about are people who are able to teach halacha l'maisa. So people are able to teach. So you will say, to give a shir and to talk about Torah, a person like that could come, could come from any shevet. The ability to deliver Torah in a way that leads, that gives people a takeaway message. And halacha l'maisa, halacha l'maisa, right? This is what you need to do. This is how you have to act. This is what you have. This is the halacha. That's a unique skill set. So it could be that teachers of Torah come from any shvatim, but those who are able to deliver shmaisa aliba de hilchasa, halacha l'maisa rulings, those individuals come from Shevet Levi or from Shevet Yisachar. I will say, I just want to point out something very interesting. You see, you have to realize, for us, we have it very different. When the Gemara speaks about the ability to deliver, Torah, halacha l'maisa, that was an incredible feat, Bisman Gemara, right? Because we'll say, what did you have to do? You had to sift through, right? All of the discussions in the Tanam and Amoraim and the Braises and the Toseftos and the Mishnayos. You have to go, see, for us, you want halacha l'maisa, what do? You open up the Shulchan Aruch, right? It's just that we don't understand, like we have a codification of halacha. It's not, there's no mystery anymore, right? There's no mystery. Okay, sometimes there's difficulties with the application, but l'maisa, the rules are all there. So the ability to learn halacha l'maisa for us is quote unquote relatively easy, but the ability, what the Gemara is describing, asuke shmaisa aliba de hilchosa, to take a sugya and to distill it down to halacha l'maisa, that is an incredible skill set, which also tells you something amazing. Kind of to speak in matters of spirituality or in matters of Torah, many people could do. But the ability to kind of find a conclusion and the ability to find a direction, ability to plot a path forward, that's much more difficult. Which we all know this just in life in general, right? It's easy to talk about things, it's easy to immerse yourself in things, but to kind of decide on a derech in life, a clear defined mahalach, a clear defined journey, a clear defined path forward, that's a suke shmaisa liba de hilchasa. Fantastic, you have all the dreams, all the aspirations, all the things you want to do. Excellent. What are you doing? What are you doing? What is your plan? That is a much harder skill set. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, in mefaisen al talmid shel ben arbaim. This is very interesting. Rabbi Yochanan comes along and says, we do not draw a separate lottery for the afternoon talmid. Remember again, lottery number 2 was for the carbon talmid of the morning. As Rabbi Yochanan says, there was no separate lottery for the carbon talmid of the afternoon, talmid shel ben arbaim. So how do they divvy it up? Very simple. Well, say incredible. So essentially, lottery number 2 was a twofer. Whatever you got in the Talmid Shal Shachar, you also got in the Talmid Shal Bein HaArbayim. Meisei, the Gemara says, is that really true? Kishim shemefaisin shachar, kach mefaisin bein arbayim. So it was a pretty explicit brayso that says the same way they did a lottery for the morning, they also did a lottery for the afternoon. To which the Gemara says, no, that's not talking about the Talmid. Kisanya hi biktores. That's talking about the Ketores. The both Ketores was offered up in the morning and in the afternoon. So they would do 2 lotteries, one for the morning Ketores, one for the afternoon Ketores. Which will say makes sense that Ketores wouldn't be the same people, because that's what the Mishnah said. Chadoshim, what was the Lashon? Chadoshim, the Ketores, bo ve'efisu. So, but for the Talmid, there was only 1 lottery in the morning, and whoever did it in the morning also did it in the afternoon. To which the Gemara says, I don't know about that. But Tanya, we learned Kishem Shemefaisin lo shachris, kach mefaisin lo arvis. We'll say a little bit of diktuk, which for many of us brings back like elementary school PTSD. Let's say, but so a little bit of diktuk over here. So remember again, kitores is nikeva, right? Kitores is feminine. So when it says kishim shemefaisin lo Rabbo says lashon zachar is masculine. That's not referring to kitores. Right, Ketoris is feminine. It should be law if it's Ketoris. So that sounds like it's referring to the carbon Talmid. Kach mevayis arvis ema law. The Gemara says, change it. Change the Raisa. It shouldn't read lo. It should just read law. Good. It's a good answer. Vatanya, we learned kishim shemefaisin lo shachris, kach mefaisin lo arvis, ukishim shemefaisin lo shachris. Kach mefaisin la arvis. We'll say this brayso kind of blows us off, because the brayso kind of says both explicitly the same way that you draw a lottery for it masculine in the morning, carbon tamid. You draw a lottery for it masculine in the afternoon as well, carbon tamid. So too, the same way you draw lottery la for it masculine, kitoras in the morning, you draw lotteries for la it feminine in the afternoon as well, kitoras. So we'll say the Brisa clearly indicates that you're drawing a lottery both for kitoras and for tamid, both in the morning and in the evening. So I'm going to show you b'Shabbos askina. No, that Brisa is talking about Shabbos. So here's what's interesting: Sunday through Friday, the Gemara is suggesting is that halacha l'maisa, they would draw lots for the carbon tamid only in the morning, not in the afternoon. Not in the afternoon, right? And whoever got the avoda in the morning would do it again in the afternoon. Now, Ketoros, you're going to see is some machlokas. This price that says over here that they would draw lots in the afternoon again, both for Ketoros and for Tamid, was talking about Shabbos. Now, I both say that makes sense because what happened on Shabbos? The Kohanic shifts. They changed, right? Remember again, that was the change of guard in the Beis Hamikdash was Shabbos afternoon. A new Beis Av, or a new Mishmar, right? A new group would come in on Shabbos. Sefer Abosai, it makes sense. Why did you have to draw a lottery again on Shabbos afternoon? Why? It was a new group of Kohanim who were there. That's why. So there was just a utilitarian reason. In other words, the same Kohanim who were there in the morning were not there in the afternoon. To which the Gemara will say, if you look at Rashi for just a moment, Rashi says, "Hoil umishmaros mischadshos umishmar sha'avat shachris eino ovid bein ha'arbayim." We'll say it's just a logistical issue. The Kohanim who worked in the morning were not there in the afternoon. Ulamai desalakadaitin meikara nefishi lehu payasos. Maisi kulam safra asu tezachi beishachris zachi be'arvis. I'm sorry. So we'll say. I'm sorry. Let's go back for just a moment. Ulaman dulamai desalka daitin meikara. So we'll say now. Remember that which we thought about before. We'll say remember again the Gemara. So now we'll say we're going to see. Well, we'll get to the conclusion in just a moment. But the Gemara says that which we thought originally that there would be a separate lottery that was drawn for the afternoon, right? Because that was the Gemara was entertaining this possibility that the Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim should have its own lottery. If that's the case, the Gemara says, Nefishi Lehu Payasos, that would end up leaving you with more lotteries. Right? So we'll say, look at Rashi just a moment. Now, both remember again, we established that there were 4 lotteries. If you're going to tell me that they drew a lottery for the Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim, that would mean what? There was another one, that there must have been a 5th. So how does that reconcile with the number 4? To which the Gemara says no. Maisi kulum safra. What they would do is they'll say if you would hold that there was a separate lottery for the Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim. We'll say when would they have done that lottery? When would they have done it? During lottery number 2. So during lottery number 2, when they were drawing lots for the Tamid Shal Shachar, they would have just drawn another lottery for what? For Allah Chalamaisa, the Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim. But there would not have been another gathering. I also remember, as we already established, when the Gemara told us that there are 4 payasas, that there are 4 drawings, there are 4 lotteries, we already understand that it's possible that really what it means is what? It doesn't really mean 4 lotteries. What does it really mean? 4 gatherings. 4 gatherings. But it's possible that within those gatherings, according to at least some opinions, multiple lotteries were drawn. Now we're going to see, we don't paskin that way. We paskin that 4 lotteries literally means 4 lotteries, but at least according to some, it just means 4 gatherings. So the Gemara just says in the Havamina that there was a separate lottery drawn for the Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim. That lottery would have been drawn during the second lottery when everybody was gathered for the Tamid Shal Shachar. They would have done another lottery ultimately again for the Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim. So the Gemara says, the Zachu Be'Bi Shachar Zachi, the Zachi Ba'arvis Zachi. So we'll say, so how do we paskin? Right? So halacha l'maisa, how do we paskin? So listen to this. So the Rambam writes as follows. The Rambam says, here, the Rambam says, this is in Hilchos Tamidin Umusafin, Perek Dalet Halacha Ches. Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim Ein Mafisin Lo Payis Acher. So I'll say, interestingly enough, halacha l'mais. Well, first of all, the Rambam Paskins, we're going to get to it in just a moment, but the Rambam Paskins, that the 4th payis, right, the 4th lottery, was ultimately there to determine who would bring the sacrificial limbs from the ram to the top of the Mizbeach. But then the Rambam says, the Tamid Shal Bein Ha'arbayim ein mafisin lo payis acher. They did not go ahead and do another lottery for the afternoon Tamid. Rather, what happened? Ella, kol koni shezacha ba'avodah bin avodah shachris, Yiske Bein Ha'arbayim. Whoever won the lottery for the morning Tamid did the same avoda in the afternoon. Same about in the afternoon. So we'll say no new lottery for Tam Shal Bin Arbayim. Chutz minak Torahs. Shehin mefisin lo payis achar bin Arbayim v'yavel kol mishlo hektar Torahs me'ol me'at shel beisav v'yafisu aleha. So we'll say halacha l'maisa, halacha l'maisa. So again, even though we would not do a new lottery for the Tam Shal Bin Arbayim, we would do a new lottery for the afternoon Ketoras, which just makes sense, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to give everybody an opportunity to do the Ketoras. I will say, interesting if the Rambam says, Vim kvar hektiru kulan miyamehen, mefisin lahen kulan b'shachar zapay shlishi, v'zeh shezacha b'shachar z'maktir ben amas. This is fascinating. Well, so listen to this. Halacha l'maisa. Number one, they did not do a separate lottery for the Tamid Shal Bein Arbayim. Rather, whoever won the lottery for the Tamid Shal Shachar did the same avoda for Tamid Shal Bein Arbayim. Ketores, they would do a new lottery. But also listen to this. Says the Rambam, what happens if you reach the state where every Kohen who was eligible got to do Ketores? So what would you do then? Then you would include then you would not do a new lottery for Ketores. So if Rabbi say once everybody got a chance, then everybody's on equal footing. If that's the case, then pretty much the Ketoras in the afternoon becomes part of the Ketoras becomes part of the lottery for the Ketoras in the morning as well. So once every Kohen had the opportunity to do Ketoras, essentially we would do one lottery in the morning, right, for Tamid and Ketoras, and whoever won the morning lottery for Tamid and Ketoras would repeat the service in the afternoon as well. Interesting. So Gemara goes weiter. Haravi chadashim mishar. Baslis lo Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So also remember again. So then it said the fourth lottery, everyone was eligible. And remember again, the fourth lottery was just to bring up the limbs. So the Gemara says, our Mishnah does not reflect the view of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. What does Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say? This nan, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Hama'ala Eivarim Lekevesh, Hu Ma'ala Osel Mizyach. So we'll say this is fascinating. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says as follows. He holds that halacha l'maisa, in the morning, they did not deposit the limbs on the ramp. Instead, what they did was, they took the limbs straight up to the top of the Mizbeach. There was no depositing on the ramp. Now the Gemara says, so obviously Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov disagrees with our Tana. Right? Our Tana holds that in the morning the Kohanim would place the limbs on the ramp, and then in the afternoon they would go ahead, or I should say, or in the afternoon they would bring them up. So I'll say, so what's happening over here? Not in the afternoon, but sometime later. So the Gemara says, Marsav Ravam Hadras Melech. So one opinion says, the more Kohanim you could get involved in the service, the better it is. So therefore I will say, again, the idea that you would have one set of Kohanim place it on the ramp, and a second set go ahead and bring it up, that's better. Mar Savar, Makom Shchina Lav Orach Ara. And the other opinion says, no, but say it doesn't look nice when a coin takes the limb and deposits it on the ramp as opposed to taking it to the top of the Mizbeach. Why? What does it look like? It looks like it's a tircha. That's too heavy. It's too cumbersome to carry the limb all the way up. So what does he do? He just deposits it on the ramp. That's the machlokes. Amar Rava, Lo Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov isleit Rabbi Huda, for Rabbi Huda isleit Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So we'll say, interestingly enough, neither. So we'll say, first of all, we take a look at Rashi just a moment. Hu ma'ale legabe mizbeach. Rashi says, Osi ish shezachabo laholicha lekevesh chozer u'ma'aleo la'achar zman lemizbeach. Ukishayim molichin oso manichin oso mechatzev shel kevesh lamata kadei shlo yitztarich laholicho kol hakevesh v'holech v'ola bekevesh ukishemagia lamakom sheivarim sham noten v'achi tam sech shkalim every time in nitne mechatze kevesh. So we'll say, interesting enough, I take it back. I said, let me reclaim it. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, everyone agrees that you're depositing the limbs on the ramp. I'm sorry. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is just saying the same Kohanim who deposited it are the same Kohanim who take it up. Because the concern ultimately is, if it's someone else, it looks like perhaps it was too cumbersome upon the first set of Kohanim. So we'll say, so the Gemara now says something very interesting. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov doesn't hold like Rabbi Huda, and Rabbi Huda doesn't hold like Rabbi Eliezer. So who's Rabbi Huda? We had Rabbi Huda on the top of Chaf Hei on the days. And right, Rabbi Huda was the one who held that halacha l'maisa, there was no separate lottery by the Ketores for the Kohen who would go ahead and bring in the coals for the Ketores. Rather, again, there was one lottery. Whoever won the Ketores, and he would ask a friend of his, can you bring in the coal? So we'll say, now watch this. The Gemara is suggesting that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and Rabbi Huda are mutually exclusive opinions. Why? So the Gemara says as follows. The Imkain, because the Gemara says, because the Imkain, last line, Batzrulei Payasos. Because I will say, interestingly enough, according to Eliezer ben Yaakov, there was no lottery for who would bring the coals for the Ketores. And according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, there was no lottery for who would bring the limbs up to the Mizbeach. Why? Because according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, why was there no lottery, Bosai? Because the same Kohen who put them there would be the same Kohen ultimately again who went ahead and brought them up. Now, they must not accept each other's opinions. Because we'll say, if they both accept their opinions, that means they're each missing a lottery. Right? So we'll say, because remember again, both of us Rabbi Yehuda say there's one lottery less than the number. But again, if they each hold that the other one is wrong, so Rabbi Yaakov says, no, there was a lottery for the coals. And Rabbi Yehuda holds, no, there was a lottery to take up the limbs, then they have the right number of lotteries, or the right number of slots. But if they would both agree with each other, they would be missing one lottery, or one slot, I should say. The Gemara says, V'i mashkachas tana d'tani chamish, and if you would in fact find a Tana who would hold that there were 5 lotteries instead of 4, the lo Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, lo Rabbi Yehuda. We'll say that that Tana would not hold like either of these opinions. Good. So we'll say, let's go back there. Tamid, Kari, Betisha. So we'll say now we've gone through, we'll say all 4 lotteries. So I just want to point out, lottery number 4 was really, according to the Mishnah, kind of the least complex. Because what was lottery number 4? Lottery number 4 was just who is bringing up the limbs. That was it. So now we know all 4. Number 1 was for the Tamid, and again, all the accompanying parts of the Tamid. Number 2, what was number 2? Chumas, I'm sorry, thank you very much. Number 1 was Chumas Hadeshin. Number 1 was Chumas Hadeshin, excellent. Number 2 was Carbon Tamid. Number 3 was Ketores. And number 4, ultimately, again, was Ma'ale Evorim. And again, except Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who we don't paskin like, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that there was no separate lottery to bring up the limbs, because whoever placed them there were the ones who took them up. So according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, where's the 4th lottery? What is that for? That would be for whoever brings in the coals for the Ketores. That's kind of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. But we reject that. We pass like the way the Mishnah reads, and therefore 4th lottery was for who gets to bring up the limbs to the Mizbeach. Good. We'll say now we've seen all 4 lotteries. Mishnah, Tamid, Kara B'tisha B'asar B'achadasar B'shnei Masar. We'll say sometimes the Tamid, Karban Tamid, is brought by 9 Kohanim, 10 Kohanim, 11 Kohanim, or 12 Kohanim. We're going to see depending on the day, depending on the circumstance. Lo pachos v'lo yoser. There are never less than 9 Kohanim and never more than 12 Kohanim. We'll say, so Rashi points out over here, Tamid Karev, Mishas Holochas, Eivarim ve'elach. So we'll say, this is not talking, I just want to point out, Rashi points out, it's not talking about Shchita, Kabbalah, and Zrika. That's how. So that's off the table. We're talking about from the time that you're moving the limbs, all the processes involved from the movement of the limbs and forward, either 9, 10, 11, 12. Ketzad, Sa'atzmo betes. So we'll say a regular day is 9 Kohanim. Look at Rashi. Atzmo b'chol yom betisha. On a regular day in the Beis Hamikdash, there are 9 Kohanim involved in the Karban Tamid. Chamisha leivarim, 5 Kohanim to bring up the sacrificial parts. The echad likirvayim, 1 to bring up the intestines. The echad l'sobas, 1 for the fine flour. Echad lechavitin, 1 for the minchas chavitin. The echad leyayin, 1 for the wine. So both say, so ultimately again, that on a regular day in the Beis Hamikdash, you have 9 Kohanim involved in the Tamid. Again, I both say, not counting the Shchita, the Kabbalah, and the Zrika. We're leaving that off. Okay, Bechag, we'll say on Sukkis, Biat Echatz Lucha Shamayim, Harikana Sarah. On Sukkis, where there was Nisuch Hamayim, the water libation, which was done with the Tamid Shel Shachar, you had a total of 10 Kohanim. Why 10? The regular 9, plus the additional 10th who was carrying the pitcher of water. Bein Harbayin, we'll say in the afternoon, Bechad Asar, there would be 11 Kohanim. Hu atzmo b'tisha, so you have the regular 9 Kohanim. Ushnayim biyadav shnei gizrei eitzim. So we'll say this is not just a regular afternoon, right? So on a regular afternoon, you have the regular 9 Kohanim, right? Plus, I will say you have 2 additional Kohanim who are each bringing a log of wood. As we're going to see again, there's an obligation in the morning and in the evening to bring up 2 pieces of wood, shnei gizrei eitzim, to put on the ma'aracha, to put on the pyre of the mizbeach. B'Shabbos, on Shabbos, B'Achad Asar, you would also have 11 Kohanim. Why 11? The Gemara says, Hu atzmo b'tisha, because remember again, both say we're always starting with 9, right? 9 is the basic number of Kohanim to perform the avoda of the Tamid. Ushnai b'yadav shnei bazichei levona. And we'll say, remember again, on Shabbos, you would burn the 2 spoons of frankincense. That were from where? They were from where? The Shulchan. Remember, Rabbi said in the shulchan which has lechem, you also had 2 spoons of frankincense. Those were burned on Shabbos. So you had 2 kohanim, each of whom held 1 spoon of frankincense. Shalachem upon him. So what's that? That's 11. Listen to this. If it was Shabbos that fell out or Sukkot that fell out on Shabbos, so they will say, what would you would have? So here's what you would have. You would have 9, which are the regular unit, right? Then what? You'd have 2 for the Levona, which is 11, right? 2 kohanim for the Levona, and then 1 additional coin to bring the water for the Nisei Chamayim. That's 12. So it goes. So the maximum number of kohanim would come up on Shabbos Sukkot. Shabbos is Sukkot. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Abba v'Yitim Rami Bar Chama v'Yitim Rabbi Yochanan. We'll say, just as an aside, the Gemara says, Nisei Chamayim was the unique water libation which was done on Sukkot. You see from our Mishnah that Nisei Chamayim was only done when? Was only done Shachris. Was only done in the morning. Now we'll say, where do we know this from? Mimai, Mediktani u'b'Shabbos Shabbosoch Achag Echad Tzlucha Shamayim. So we'll say, interesting enough, because again, remember, the Mishnah says it pretty explicitly. The Mishnah says the details that one of the additional kohanim that would have to be needed would be to bring up the pitcher of water, which was done by Tamid Shal Shachar. So you see from here clearly from the Mishnah that the Nisei Chamayim, the water libation, was done as part of the morning Tamid. So we'll say, and if you want to say that Nisei Chamayim was done by the afternoon Tamid, then we'll say ultimately, again, remember, in the afternoon, you're already having a minimum of 11 kohanim, right? So we'll say, why a minimum of 11 kohanim by the afternoon? What's happening in the afternoon? Remember, why 11? So remember, we're always starting out with what number? 9. 9 is our basic number. And in the afternoon, we establish what's happening during the Tav Shalabin Abayim. What are we doing? The Shnei Gizrei Eitzim. If you want to tell me that Nisei Chamayim can be done in the afternoon, then you can find an afternoon case that is 12 kohanim as well. To which the Gemara says, Amravashi Afana Nami Tanina. We also have another brayso that supports this idea that Nisei Chamayim was done in the morning. Let's listen to this. Ulamanasech Omer lo. So both sides, to the person, we're going to see this is a sugi in sukkah. To the manasek, to the person who in Nisei Chamayim, they would say to him, Hagbe yadecha. Extend and raise your hands. Now I will say, here's what's interesting. When the Kohen would pour the water for Nisei Chamayim, they would make him extend his hands and extend his arms and pour the water in a visible fashion. Why, Rabbi? Say, listen to this. Because what would happen? Shepam achad nisech al gabe raglov. Because one time the Kohen purposely poured the water on his feet. Uregamu kol ha'am be'esrogehen. And everybody pelted him with their esrogim. Now what's happening over here? So remember, the machlokes between the tzdukim and ultimately, again, the regular Jewish people, which are the tzdukim, do not remember, I want to point out, the avodah of Nisei Chamayim is not explicitly stated in the Torah. It's learned out halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Halacha l'Moshe Misinai. The tzdukim do not believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh. So the tzdukim did not believe in Nisei Chamayim. So at times when there were tzeduki kohanim, what they would do is they would pretend like they were doing Nisei Chamayim, but they wouldn't pour the water on the Mizbeach. Because remember again, we'll say the Nisei Chamayim, the water is poured on the side of the Mizbeach. So instead what they would do is they would pour the water on their feet. They would pour the water on their feet. So when the rabbis got wind of this, because one time this happened and people saw it, and they lost. So therefore, as a result of this, the rabbi said, when you do Nisei Chamayim coin, you have to extend your arms so everyone could see what you're doing. Because apparently, one time the coin poured the water on his feet, the people did not take kindly to this, and they threw their esrogim at him. And I will say, now the reason why that's important is because when are you taking your lulav and esrog? In the morning. So you see clearly from this story that Nisei Chamayim was done in the morning. So it was just another proof to the fact that Nisei Chamayim was an avodah that was done as part of Tamid Shal Shachar. Tanya, Rashbi Omer, that's incredible. Rishon Bar Yochai says, I will say now, Rashbi is introducing something very interesting. How do you know that when you bring the afternoon Tamid, not only do you have to bring 2 pieces of wood, Shnei Gizrei Eitzim, but we'll say each of those pieces of wood is carried by one Kohen. So it's not, because we'll say you might have thought, okay, you have to bring 2 pieces of wood and one Kohen could carry 2 pieces of wood. No, Rashbi says, it has to be 2 pieces of wood and each piece carried by one Kohen. Shenemar va'archu eitzim. The pasuk says they will arrange the wood. It's plural. They will arrange the wood. 2 kohanim will arrange the wood. So the Gemara says, now, if I don't need that phrase for the Talmud Shal Shachar, because by Talmud Shal Shachar it says Dechsev ubir aleh hakohen itzim baboker va'arach aleha. So ultimately, again, apply the pasuk to the afternoon Talmud, and Rashbi uses that pasuk ultimately to teach me that halacha lamaisa, 2 kohanim, each carrying up one piece of wood, bring the wood up for Talmud Shal Bein Arbaim. Ve'ema idi v'idi b'Talmud Shal Shachar. But why can't I say that the pasuk is also referring to the morning Talmud? And after all, v'amar rachmana avid v'hadar avid. And maybe what the Torah is actually telling me is, maybe in the morning I actually have to bring up 2 sets of Shnei Gizrei Eitzim. 2 sets of Shnei Gizrei Eitzim, right? Bring up the first set, then bring up the second set. Imkei nemakra ubir. So both say, if that's the case, let the Torah use the same lashon. I kasav rachmanu ubir hava min achad in trelo. If the Torah would have just said ubir, I would have thought that it's only done by 1 coin, not by 2. Kamash malon, that not. Dene avid chad, dene avid trey. That ultimately, again, so the Gemara says maybe there should be a first placement and then a second placement. Imkei nemakra ubir ubiaro. Inami v'arach v'archo. My ubir v'archo. So we'll say, if that's the case, the Torah should have used 2 different lashonos. Why does it say therefore ubir v'archo? Shmamina kidaminon. Therefore we'll say ultimately again, it must be coming to teach us that which we said before, namely that halacha l'maisa is referring to 2 different tamidin. And therefore I will say again, Rashbi teaching us that halacha l'maisa, the phrase of ubira la, the phrase of va'archu eitzim is coming to teach me that halacha l'maisa, the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim of the afternoon are brought up by 2 independent kohanim. So we'll have to stop over here. We'll pick up in Meretz. Actually, let me just finish the Mishnah. Tani Pinchas, Payis Pamim Yud Gimel, Pamim Yudal, Pamim Tezvav, Pamim Tezayin. So the Gemara Pinchas says sometimes. Ultimately, again, there are 13 kohanim, sometimes 14 kohanim, sometimes 15 kohanim, sometimes 16 kohanim. I will say, so I just want to point out, Rashi points out over here very quickly, Pamim Yud Gimel, kohanim asukim bavodas atamik kidisnan. So again, so you'll look through this on your own. Sometimes there are different numbers of kohanim involved in the avodah. Sometimes 13, sometimes 14, sometimes 15, sometimes 16. So you're going to say 13 is a regular day. 14 is Nisa Chamayim, 15 is Shabbos, 16 is on Shabbos that falls out during Yom Tov. Tanya Yud Zayin, sometimes, Bryce says, sometimes there's even 17 Kohanim, to lo Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, elek Rabbi Yehuda. Rather, Rabbi say, ultimately, again, that would reflect the opinion, not like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, who holds that there is no pious, there is no extra Kohen who brings up the limbs, but rather, again, reflect the view of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that there are additional Kohanim who bring up the limbs. Rabbi, I'm sorry, we went fast. We'll stop over here, Miras Hashem. We'll pick up at the new Mishnah, Miras Hashem, tomorrow. Share Chavosai.